real quick, my name's Luke Kerner. I'm the CEO partner at CryptoOracle. We are a community-first VC accelerator and incubator, and if any of you are in New York, we run something called Crypto Commons, which is a crypto shared workspace, and if you're in Berlin, that's where the second one's opening up. And so that's who I am, and let's guys, I'll let each of you introduce yourselves.
Chris Housser, co-founder and COO of Polymath. It's a decentralized application on the Ethereum blockchain that allows people to create security tokens in an easy and compliant manner. We don't do the legal for those folks, but what our platform does is it allows people to create tokens where trades and transfers of the tokens are restricted to only authorized and whitelisted addresses.
So I'm Daniel Coheur. I'm co-founder and responsible for strategy at Tokeny. I guess we do pretty much the same thing, right? So we have a tokenization platform. We take care of the issuance on the primary market and for security token and utility token as well. And then we take care of managing the life cycle of the token after the issuance, as well as permission token on secondary trading.
Cool, I'm Jamie Finn, co-founder of Securitize, and we do primary issuance like most people. We pride ourselves on our compliance protocol, which is called the Digital Securities Protocol.
Yeah, Timo Lehes, co-founder of Swarm, and we are a market infrastructure for security tokens, and it's basically a decentralized network of nodes that operate a security token blockchain and the compliance layer that we have built on top of the blockchain.
Okay, terrific. Timo, I'll start with you, and if everybody can answer. Just to help put the rest of the conversation in context, and we're here talking about the tokenization platforms, where are we in terms of the ability actually of these platforms to actually issue these tokens and for the tokens to trade?
Yeah, so we're in a very good place because 12 months ago when we started talking about security tokens, nobody would listen. So now, today, when you talk about security tokens, it's a very popular topic, so it's much better now than 12 months ago. That's kind of one part of the answer. I think the second part is that we distinguish very clearly between, let's say, asset-backed tokens, security tokens, and let's say ICO security tokens. So we started out with tokenizing LP positions in funds and bringing basically hedge funds, private equity funds, real estate funds to the masses. And so that was kind of our first, let's say, focus with Swarm. And the reason why we did that was because we didn't want to have like all the ICO noise brought onto our platform or network. So I've done like over 40 tech investments in the past. I know what the numbers look like from a stats point of view. So
any of those security tokens?
Yeah, no. So okay. The point being that.
So where are we? So you don't own any security tokens.
So here's the thing: if you bring on really good, assets and you tokenize those assets, high quality assets, we think that's a good place to start, and that's where we started. So we're early days, but there's some really good things out there that you can buy with security tokens.
Okay, Jamie, I know.
Yeah, I mean, I do. Active. Yeah, so it's I was a seed investor in Spice VC, so I've got a very significant amount of Spice's tokens in my wallet. And actually today we just started the issuance.
And just tell the story, because it's interesting, right? I mean, that's why Securitize.
Yeah, I mean, we basically needed a platform, and Carlos came to me and was like, "Hey, we need to build this thing. You want to invest?" And I was looking at the space, and I'm kind of a Neanderthal investor, right? Like the ICO thing didn't make a ton of sense to me. I wasn't buying anything. I don't need to buy the future use of something. It didn't make sense to me. I wanted something that would make money for me. And so investing in a VC fund, which I couldn't do myself, was really interesting. And so that's how it came together. And I think the fact every time I log into the dashboard and I see my tokens, or I can even see them on my Trezor, they're sitting there, and I can do what I want with them. Trading's about to start. So it's going to be really interesting. And earlier today, we started the second issuance now of 22X. So 22X fund right now is being delivered to everyone's wallets. It's going to take a good 18 to 24 hours to do because it's not the fastest environment. But in running these issuances, you see the real problems. And so it's fascinating right now.
And so again, in terms of where we are, so you're saying we can, you're actually out there issuing tokens and on the trading side?
Yeah. Yeah, we've completed integration now with Open Finance. Been working with a couple of other decentralized and centralized exchanges around integrating the compliance protocol. And so as we do that, we're learning all the time. We're learning about a lot of the things guys were talking about earlier and implementing those kind of controls. I think we'll see, I definitely think we'll see this month trading start. at a very, very micro level, there's going to only be a few tokens, BCAP, SPICE, 22X, and because there's a lot of that stuff that was issued under Reg S. So I think that trading will start, but it's going to be super thin, right? So if everybody's out there, go trade these things.
And what's the, so you mentioned second issuance of 22X. I think, great concept out of, they aggregated a bunch of companies out of a startup 500 batch. Some of them are, I know, and are really great companies.
Yeah.
How much was raised from that? And
I think the net of it we'll see is going to only be a few $1 million. It's not going to, the aspiration was very big. And the net of it, the companies will end up getting, 75 grand a pop or something, so it's very small. It was a very aspirational project. I think we learned a lot, and they're going to go out and raise some more because the equity's still there, so it can still be bought at a pretty serious discount.
And what was the primary lesson learned?
Having a venture partner run the fundraise is a really good idea. When you have folks who haven't done fundraising before, it doesn't normally work out that well.
Note to self.
Yeah, note to self.
Okay. That seems like good advice. Yeah. Daniel?
So I guess I'm the only member of the panel that is not based in the US, so give you a different perspective. So we're based in Luxembourg. We started operation in March last year. So in the meantime, we've been launching our tokenization platform with utility tokens. So we run 12 ICOs, raise 50 million USD for those projects, perform 60,000 KYCs. Now we're moving to security token, which is obviously an extension of what we did with utility tokens, the same transaction platform, but security tokens are more complex because they have a life after the issuance. They don't feed an ecosystem, so we need to develop the proper tool for investors and issuers to manage those tokens and then bring them to secondary trading. You asked me where we stand. I think there is something that we're observing here is for utility token, there is a big vibe. Obviously, there was $8 billion that was invested in utility token. I see that very much like people going to a casino, and they came with 100 euro, and then they end up having 10,000 euro, right? So what would you do? You're probably going to take 2,000 euro out of that and continue gambling.
No, I'd probably go to the bar.
Yeah, well, and you'll be with me probably. But what happens is that there was a massive amount of money that was flooded into ICO because those people that wanted to gamble those $2,000, probably with the expectation they would make $20 million, continue gambling. And I think now that those people probably dump all their money, and now the market is dry. So what we need to focus on now is how do we convince the people that do not have those coins to invest fiat currency into those projects. And that's where we are now. It's not about focusing on people that had crypto and became rich out of that, but how do we bring people with real money into this business?
Are you originally from Luxembourg?
I'm Belgian, actually.
And so did you move to Luxembourg to do this?
Well, I've been living for 25 years in Luxembourg. I hate paying taxes, so.
Stop bragging. Good. Chris?
So where are we now? I'd say 2016, 2017 were the years of the ICO and the utility tokens. We started Polymath in the spring of 2017, and we thought that 2018 would be the year of STOs and security tokens. It's taken a bit longer than that, both from a development standpoint and regulatory standpoint. We launched our platform in January of this year. However, if you didn't know how to code on the blockchain, it was basically you weren't able to use it. In August, we put out our point-and-click application layer, and now people are able to go on to Polymath. They can create a security token, they can consult with legal, and they can go about raising money for their security token. And so we're waiting for that first batch of issuers to go through the platform and start to raise money using our system and other similar systems in the blockchain to really bring the security token movement to full fruition.
Have you learned anything yet from the pointing and clicking that's going on the platform?
Yeah, for me, having gone through it many times, it's easy to use, but as new people are coming in and trying to use it, there's endless questions. It's usable in any jurisdiction as well, but there's different regulations in each specific jurisdiction. So they'll ask questions, and if our framework or our standard doesn't adhere to, say, over in Singapore or somewhere in Europe, we're constantly making iterations so that the framework can be used worldwide in a not point and click, but consult with legal and change the variables as they need be to create a token that's compliant within their jurisdiction and the jurisdictions of all the investors that they seek to raise funds from.
And have you learned anything just in terms of the jurisdictions? Are you surprised on where people are from who are going and using the platform? Have you seen any particular country standing out that's surprising or missing?
I think, especially from a marketing standpoint, which is, for us, people think Polymath's only usable in Canada and the United States. Really, it's usable everywhere. We've consulted with people in Singapore, in Hong Kong, South America. There's been a number of interested parties, and it's just about getting the messaging out that really this framework is usable everywhere, and let's talk to your regulators, and that's part of our mission too, is going forward to speak with the SEC, to speak with regulators in Canadian provinces and worldwide, just to educate them and learn from them what we can do better.
Cool. And Jamie, now you've done a number of these. You're saying now actually you said you're going to do a second raise, a second issuance for 22x. Yep. What are you doing differently now than you were a while back?
Basically bringing on professional fundraiser that knows how to do these things. And it's not me; it's the funds doing it, right? I think.
And so, what did 22x hire somebody? Internally to the team who's now part of the team?
Yeah, somebody who was already involved is kind of taking a much more senior role, very experienced person in the space and pushing that out. But the other thing here to remember is this isn't, like in many of these cases, like a venture fund, it's not the same as a standard ICO, right, where they need a huge amount of capital to even be functional. These things can go out with much smaller amounts of capital and continue to close. I think Spice is also going to go out and do another kind of set. So, you can go out and continue to raise capital around these things as they're kind of out in the market and trading. So I think that's going to be like managing liquidity and investor relations are things that people are not thinking about, and they should really need to start thinking about because these are fundamental issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Yeah, you're totally right, but hard to think about that until you actually. It seems so hard to raise the money just to begin with today.
Yeah, capital formation is absolutely the biggest challenge. I would say the bulk of the investors we see are not American in the deals we have. We see a lot of foreign investors because they're earlier they're kind of further on in the crypto cycle and they understand it a little bit better. American investors are minimal. I think Spice has 3, and I know 2 of them personally.
Wow, and again, I'll ask you the same question on Chris. Are there any particular countries that you see are standing out and are more active on your platform? Jim?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked to see Nigeria, like a lot of real investors showing up with real amounts of money from Nigeria.
A lot of princes there, right?
A lot of princes. But it blows you away. Like even being able to do KYC on them and figure out the information is fascinating. Like that all that infrastructure is there. And it was really surprising to me when I saw that kind of all start to happen. And you have to look at the founders of the group. Like the 22X fund has a couple of African startups. And so they were able to raise capital there. That's an amazing thing if you think about it. And that entire continent is there and growing tremendously quickly, and so the opportunity that could happen will be really interesting.
And so you said your average check of which just for 22X was $75,000.
That was to the out to the companies, but the average investment, about $10,000. I think you'd see.
And that's, Timo, obviously dramatically different from what the plan is on your platform.
Yeah, I think just kind of talking about the international aspect of this and just reflecting on the previous panel, it's so US-centric, it's almost ridiculous, right? So, when we first launched in January, we had users from over 50 countries in 5 days. So, you don't know that. When you're running your community on Telegram, you have no idea where people are coming from. And then all of a sudden, they show up and they register and they provide KYC. And then we have people from 50 countries, and now we have 60 plus something. So that's the reality, and some of these countries would be, I don't know, somewhat surprising, I guess. Like we have a big user base in Vietnam. Why? Vietnam has 35% inflation per year. They want to buy something that's a stable asset or something that's interesting to them that's outside of their own fiat currency. Makes sense, right? So, and also, obviously, these are early crypto adopters, so they would only know about Swarm if they were in the crypto space from the beginning. So that's kind of, slicing the demographic in a different dimension, so to speak.
And Daniel, what are you seeing from users on your platform?
Well, I think that the users are coming from the market that you're targeting. There are so many marketing companies in this industry that if you want to work with one that is focusing in Vietnam because this is where they have the best relationship, you're going to get investors from Vietnam. If you're targeting the Nigerian market, you're going to get investors from Nigeria. How the hell would they know about your product if they don't hear about it, right?
Discovery is a fundamental issue.
So I think that if you want to focus on the market, you just put your marketing dollar into that market and you get investors from that market. And then, of course, if you focus on the wrong market, you're going to have a lot of people that will, make your platform basically explode with a lot of KYC that end up, being dropped in the middle of the process. That's not what you want to see, right? So I think the fundamental of this business is about creating visibility. So you have to pick up a good marketing company that will deliver you the visibility you want and the type of investor you want.
And so, given the importance of kind of discoverability, which makes a lot of sense, are you doing anything to help the companies drive that for themselves?
Well, actually, we are really defining ourselves as a technology company. I think that in the early days of ICOs, people were not very familiar with ICOs, so they wanted to have a one-stop shop, and everybody was capable of doing everything, which is completely wrong, of course. So we decided from the beginning to focus on the technology and bring a network of partners that would complement what we do. If we are not expert in the legislation in Malta, we work with firms that have that expertise. We're not expert with legislation in the US. We have a network of partners that does that. And we being the technology part, I think that focusing on the technology is essential because you want scalability, you want security. And also you need to have a roadmap that will meet the market's speed, and that's really not easy. So focus on what you are good at.
And Chris, how do you think about discoverability and helping the companies on your platform reach their audience?
I think a lot of companies and aspiring issuers have seen the success, and I say success in terms of the amount of money raised for a lot of these ICOs, and think that they can go about and do a security token offering and also raise $50 million or $100 million, whatever the number may be. And I'm not quite sure if the investors are ready to put that type of money into these securities. When you look at the ICO space, everyone was expecting overnight 1,000% return or 10x in a year, whereas securities, there's no reason if you tokenize a building or sell equity in your company that it should go up in the same way that ICOs went up. So I think sort of that message and defining who those investors are is really important to the issuers. It's not necessarily the crypto-rich people that have traditionally invested in Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the ICO space that they need to communicate with. It's educating the traditional investors into the blockchain space and into crypto and teaching them about how now they can hold their own assets, they can hold the securities, and hopefully there'll be added liquidity for a lot of these private offerings that don't currently have much liquidity.
So liquidity, Jamie, you talked about that, and obviously you're right. Most people, they're so focused on trying to raise the money, thinking about, okay, now that they've actually done an ICO, if you're tradable, that's great, but if there's nobody to buy it, it doesn't matter that you're tradable. So, how do you think about, it's kind of discover, obviously part of it is discoverability after the initial offering, but how are you thinking about, liquidity and helping your clients think about liquidity?
Well, at this point, we're kind of exploring kind of conversations with all the normal liquidity providers and trying to really understand the dynamics of that market. We're not in any way, shape, or form experts in financial markets in that way. And so there's a ton of education, and that's where we're spending our time, is really, these kind of edges that are super important, but they're not core to our product, but they're super important for our customers.
And is there anybody, that you see who's, providing liquidity, that you think, gosh, these guys are doing a great job of bringing liquidity to the market, or we're not there
We
yet?
have customers that have been very successful at raising very large sums of money. And they'll go out, and I believe that those types of offerings will have liquidity. They'll be brand name things that people understand. I think a brand name in this space will help a lot. Things that people recognize and want to buy, I think will really help move the market forward. That's when I think we'll start to understand what it all means.
And are there any brand names coming down the pike you're aware of that you think, gosh, this,
Yeah, I think I've heard about a bunch of real estate, like very high-end real estate deals coming out. We've seen the Templum's Aspen coin. That's a St. Regis fantastic property. So it's starting to happen, and recognizable things are starting to happen. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see a bunch more of those in the next few weeks.
And Timo, how does it work, the liquidity from the fund side?
Well, I think the big thing here is that we're now involved in two projects that's basically tokenizing existing assets. Has nothing to do with raising capital, has everything to do with providing, the ability for people to buy into premium assets. And one is a secondary in, one of the very large high-tech tech companies from China. And the second one is a 9-digit real estate portfolio. So like when I look at this...
Sorry, what kind of portfolio?
Real estate.
Real estate.
Yeah, so when I look at this, it's like the bigger numbers are coming from that side. Like when you take a large asset, 100 million plus, and you start providing liquidity through something like a blockchain infrastructure, that's when the big numbers come in. If you take an ICO startup and then bring it onto the blockchain and try to create a security, it's nice. It's going to be minuscule compared to what you can do with tokenizing like large assets. So that's where I see the big shift. And also, just to answer the question about liquidity, when you have those assets on your chain, well, that's when the real money rolls in. So there's a bunch of family offices that we're now having dialogues about. So we kind of shortcut it from the day one, so we know there's going to be liquidity for that asset immediately when it's brought onto the chain.
And are you seeing on the family side, what are they doing in terms of, are they actually going to take the token themselves and hold it in a wallet, or are you helping them find custodians for that?
Yeah, 90%, 99%, they're not going to hold them themselves. They don't know how to do it, basically.
Sure, and so who's going to hold it for them?
A partner. So basically, we have, we haven't announced yet, but we have 2 different partners that handle either fiat or crypto, custodian solutions and kind of combinations thereof. So it's a key element as part of that whole kind of building the vertical solution, all the way from the investor down to the asset.
Okay, cool. And Daniel, so Luxembourg, no taxes, that's a draw.
I'm not going to say anything on camera. I completely agree with you with regard to liquidity, but let maybe give you another angle to liquidity. First of all, the promise that was made to ICO was that you buy something, you dump it on an exchange, it's automatically liquid, right? And for STOs, we have the same type of view, although nowadays when you raise equity, it's totally liquid. So why suddenly should it be totally liquid, right? Because you're going to put it on exchange. May not be the expectation of investors. So liquidity is also, especially in Europe where you don't have that easy access to capital market, where you can take that asset and use it for collateral. So you're not going to sell it, you're just going to use it to create another form of liquidity for you, right? We're working with a company in Finland that do real-time personal credit. And so now they use data from the consumer and they say, yes, you can have credit or not. Tomorrow with a tokenized asset, you could say, well, we cannot give you credit, but if you give us a tokenized asset and put it in as collateral, then we can give you the credit. And by the way, that's given another angle also to fractionalization, because you may not have to give the whole asset, you can just give a fraction of it to basically guarantee the loan that we're going to give you. So that's another benefit, and that's another view on liquidity that so far we're not addressing. We just think about liquidity, exchange, sell immediately. As an investor,
So I'm thinking, okay, you've got a private asset before it's tokenized. Can't you just go out and get a loan against that? How does being tokenized help?
Fractionalize it, I guess.
Fractionalize simply, if I buy shares in a company that is not listed, or do you want to put that in collateral against a loan or against anything? The bank is not going to take that, right? It's not going to happen. So of course, we agree that if you do that with startup, the value of that token will be zero. But if you work with mid-cap company that has the value, that have audited books, or real estate has a value that you can easily check, right? So you can get liquidity from that asset. You wouldn't have that if you don't use a tokenized asset. That's not going to happen.
Okay, we started the panel by saying, where are we today? Let's finish the panel. We got 5 minutes left. Let's finish the panel. Chris, you said that 2018 was going to be the year of the STO. Didn't quite happen in that way. What do you think 2019 holds for us?
So if you look at the total crypto market cap right now, it's about $220 billion. I think security tokens will start to really come to fruition, hopefully in 2019, so it's off by a year. But as these mid-cap companies and other companies start to tokenize and bring hundreds of millions of dollars to the crypto space, I think we can easily see that number go from 220 upwards of $1 trillion in 2019, and if not then, by 2020 for sure, I see us, the crypto space, hitting $1 trillion.
By 2020, if not 19.
Right.
Well, I totally agree, but I would say that the big swing is not going to come from the US, but probably from Europe. I think if you take examples such as a company like Skype, The regulation that was existing at the time in the US prevented Sky from growing and becoming successful in the US. It first started to be successful in Europe. You can say the same thing for Spotify. So regulation here exists, but if it doesn't move fast enough, we in Europe will move faster.
And so where do you think of, we're looking at the end of 2019, what do you think the market cap of security tokens?
Well, I don't think that it will move that fast, to be honest, because you really need to educate people. You need to work with the regulator to give them confidence that they can collect tax, because ultimately, the only way they're going to support you is by proving them that, there is a system that was working and that they're not going to lose out of it. So it will take time to get there, but the moment that we will get there, I think that the market will truly explode.
Terrific, thanks.
This is one of those ones where it's like, everybody already answered it.
Go for it.
Yeah, so I mean, my point of view on this one is it's going to take a hell of a lot longer than we expect. And when it happens, it's going to happen way faster than we can anticipate. The market will change in a way that we don't necessarily understand. We can all start to see it here. And I don't know, I don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but it's happening. The room is filled with people who are making this happen.
Yeah, there's something called Amari's Law. He was a professor at Stanford in the 70s. And he coined Amari's Law, which is the fact that the impact of all great technological change is overestimated in the short run and underestimated in the long run. I think that's exactly what you just said, and I totally agree with that. This will be the same as everything else. So it might not be $1 trillion next year, but it's coming. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm actually looking more at innovation rather than numbers, like top-line numbers. So I think, what you mentioned, Daniel, things like when you can start using security tokens as collateral in various models, like, I'm an avid user of Nexo. I think it's a super cool service. And once you understand what Nexo does, and then you extrapolate that into the security token domain, then you realize, wow, this is going to be massive once this is on a horizontal global infrastructure that actually works from a regulatory point of view. And then, like today, you can just chuck in your Bitcoin and then get cash out, and then it just works. And like if you extrapolate that out over $1 trillion security token industry, that's huge. And so, talking about liquidity, talking about innovative like financial instruments and products going forward, that's what I'm looking for in 2019 more than like top line, tokenized numbers.
And on the innovation front, I agree with you completely. I think what I'm most excited about is the fact that now this can be infinite, right? Securities can be anything. Put a smart contract on top of them, and they can be, they can be anything. And I feel right now in the security token industry, it's like I feel like the beginning of television, the very first TV show was a guy sitting at a desk with a microphone doing radio, saying, "Hey, now we're on television," right? And so taking even though it was a brand new medium. And to some degree, I feel like, in the beginning, right, that's what we're doing now. We're just taking everything and putting it on. And so, just with the last couple, I don't know if any of you have any, just real quick, here's an innovation that nobody's thought of that now we're going to be able to do. And I know that's a tough question.
I mean, look, I think a lot of people, some of the people here are already doing it. Like taking a security that's only in the US and making it available to the whole world is a pretty significant move forward.
No, undoubtedly. Well, terrific. Thought the panel was great, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Lou.
Thank you.